Hey everyone, it's Peter Kerr from Rock Daydream Nation, and I've got my mate from Melbourne, Peter Wicks from Wixxyleaks. How are you, mate?
Good, and yourself?
Not too bad, not too bad. Been looking forward to this episode. We're going to pick 10 songs each of Australian songs that you must hear. It's not necessarily the best songs. We're not doing a ranking show. It's just 10 great songs that we like and we want to share with the public. So what we'll do it round robin. Take it away, Mr. Wicks. What's your first song that you want to share with the audience?
All right. Well, my songs are pretty much all over the place as far as styles and whatnot go.
Yep.
So the one I'm going to start out with is from 1999, a band called Dead Star. I don't know if you know Dead Star, but
yes, I do.
They were formed by Peter Jane, who replaced Paul Hester in Crowded House, Caroline Kennedy on vocals, and Barry Palmer, who's formerly of Hunters and Collectors. So the song I'm doing is Deeper Water. It's not a real rocky song, but it chugs along, and I just I like the premise of the song. You know, taking risk. Heading out into the deeper water. So theme wise, I think it hits all the right notes. Sound wise, it's very guitar orientated, but at the same time, it's a pop song basically. It's a bit like a pop song with a little bit of steroids, if that makes any sense. So, and Caroline's vocals are brilliant, like excellent. I don't know why they never became a bigger band than they were, but anyway, that's a fantastic song. If you haven't heard it, look it up. Deeper Water, Dead Star.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that song. They've got a lot of radio airplay in the day. I never had the opportunity to see them live, but I really like that. And I would put them in the same sort of category. They're not so far removed from the Falling Joys, the Clouds, a little bit alternative but commercial at the same time, a little bit of jangle, rock, alternative. Very catchy song. That's a great start. Well done. I'm going to go back in time, way back in time, and you'll know this song, Pete. It is an Australian masterpiece. It was written by a guy called Johnny Young. It was produced by Ian Molly Meldrum, and I'm talking about The Real Thing. This is an Australian masterpiece. It's a psych classic. Anyone overseas, do yourself a favor and listen to this song. It's hypnotic. It's atmospheric. It's an Australian classic. It's just, how would I describe it? It's like an opera. It's got a simple sort of melody, but it goes into something that's more sort of psychedelic. There's sound effects that are added into it. So, you know, it's not too far outside the wheelhouse of maybe early Pink Floyd. I'm talking the Syd Barrett era. There's collages of sound. There's backmasking. It's just wild. And Ian Molly Meldrum is well known in Australia as a presenter on a show called Countdown, but he had an earlier life. He was a record producer. And the way he described it was he was just twiddling the knobs. Well, throw me down with a feather. Whatever he's done on this song is just pure genius. It's sort of like throwing paint at a wall and it sticks and it's turned into a masterpiece. And Meldrum did some further stuff. I think he produced the Ferrets, and even Colleen Hewitt did some wonderful things. But it's symphonic, it's big, it's loud, it's a masterpiece.
Very ahead of its time too.
Yeah. The Real Thing, Russell Morris, and it's been covered by Midnight Oil. Even Kylie Minogue's covered it.
Really?
Yep. Yeah, everyone's covered it, but it's a masterpiece, and I've got to choose it. So if you're into garage rock, you're into psych, do yourself a favour, The Real Thing by Russell Morris, and that's my first pick.
Yeah, very excellent pick. Well, I'm going to go off on a completely different wavelength now. When I went through when I was picking songs, I thought, well, I wanted to pick some songs that were very iconically Australian, that really summed up the Australian way of life. And a band that came to mind was Mental as Anything. So this one goes back to 1982, and it's called Too Many Times. And for those of you not in Australia, Australia has a rather notorious drinking culture, shall we say.
Indeed we do. Indeed we do.
And I think this song just sums it up. I could have gone with The Nips Are Getting Bigger, but Too Many Times, I think, to me, it's just so Australian. It's just, sitting around drinking beer and, and not much else. I mean,
the lad culture, it's part of the social fabric. I mean, we are a convict nation, aren't we? It was built on rum.
Well, it was
built on rum.
It is built around a bust up, like the song is. Like he breaks up and then he's, hits the grog. But like he says, staying home and drinking beer is normal for his health. Like that's so Australian. And I love the line in it where he says, "I think it might rain this afternoon," and that to me is just a stupid line. But in Australia, it's like you sit around drinking, and eventually the conversation runs dry, and it just turns to the weather because there's nothing else to talk about. And that just absolutely nails that, and everyone's experienced it. It's so that's my second choice.
That's a great choice, and I've always thought that Mental as Anything are the ultimate Trojan horse band. They look quirky, funny, but their lyrics are so intelligent, so incisive, observational, and there's a quadruple threat. Everyone in that band can sing, so everyone can are songwriters. So you've got Martin Plaza's got a beautiful voice. He's like the Roy Orbison. You've got the late Greedy Smith. He's a great singer-songwriter, and the big hit for Mental as Anything was Live It Up. Yep. And then you've got the guys from Dog Trumpet.
Reg Mombasa, like Mambo. Like that became that guy's an incredible artist.
Quadruple threat, and unfortunately, they're not in our social consciousness anymore in Australia. We don't talk about them enough. I mean, when Greedy sadly passed away 4 years ago, there was a bit of a build-up in the media and then gone. You don't talk about them, and they should get a lot more love. And I did a show with Bicycle Legs, and he covered one of their albums as one of the Australian albums that you must listen to, was one of the Mental as Anything's albums. And I think that's a great choice.
When I was a kid, I had the Nips Are Getting Bigger as a single on green vinyl. On the other side was a song called Possible Theme for a Future TV Drama Series.
Absolutely.
They were just great.
Yeah, and they got a lot of interest from Elvis Costello and the Stiff label. They're a great band, and they are definitely the ultimate Trojan horse. Appearances are deceiving. It's just smart lyrics and wonderful musicians. So my next one is a band that I want to throw a bit of love. It comes from Melbourne. I would describe them as new wave or post-punk. They formed in the early 80s, fronted by Sean Kelly, and later James Freud joined them. And I'm talking about the Models, and I'm talking about the song I Hear Motion. I think this is just a great song. I saw them actually last night at the Bridge Hotel in Sydney at Roselle. Wow, and Sean Kelly is still fronting the band, and they sound magnificent. They do a lot of their older stuff. They throw a little bit of James Freud stuff towards the end of their set, but they have still got it. But this song to me I think is the pinnacle of that electro post-punk new wave sound of the early 80s and it's distinctly Australian. And the thing that really sort of the penny dropped for me in regards to Sean Kelly's vocals, he sounds like Ian Curtis from Joy Division. He's got that sort of really mournful vocals. But this song, I Hear Motion, is about they're fighting and struggling with their inner consciousness, their inner voice. So it's similar sort of themes to Ian Curtis and what he was going through with the Joy Division. It's very dark lyrically, it's very introspective, but it's cutting edge, and it just, if you think that the Models were out of mind, out of sight, listen to their early stuff. It is just classic new wave. Influenced by Gang of Four, as I said, Joy Division, a bit of New Order. I think it's a great song. I Hear Motion.
Good pick. I actually thought you were going to say Out of Mind, Out of Sight when you said the Models.
No,
I Hear Motion. That's a great.
That's not
pick.
one of my favourite songs. I don't like that song much.
No, really, I quite like it. It's quite catchy and big. Well, I'll go along with the motion theme.
Yeah.
I'll go with another band out of Melbourne, which are kind of very much out of the post-punk era. It's a song from 2001 and a band called Rocket Science. You've seen them?
Yes.
I never had the opportunity, unfortunately. And they were described by Rolling Stone once as being the greatest live act on earth. Funnily enough. But the song I'm picking is called Being Followed, out of 2001. And I just think it's such a fantastic song. Like it's got a real edginess to it, real frantic vocals, and it's got the keyboard in it is very Doors-like, very reminiscent of the Doors. Some of it. It's fantastic song, and the singer Roman Tucker, he a lot of people might not know this, but he had a bad fall, landed on his head, and ended up in an induced coma. And when he woke, he didn't even know who he was. So he basically had to learn everything again. But Being Followed, it's basically about being followed, funnily enough. But fantastic song. If you haven't heard it, you'll probably recognise the tune if you hear it. But it's got a real edge to it, and couldn't leave it.
No, that's a good pick. I did see them once. They supported Radio Birdman, and they played a theremin.
They played what?
They played an instrument, the theremin. They're kind of got a bit of a retro feel about them, but I thought that was really, really weird, but classy at the same time.
Definitely an unusual band, as like out there, but which is why I like them, and the songs just out there too, like the vocals and the delivery. It's just very frantic.
Good stuff. All right, that's good. My next one is a band that was formed in 1981. It was a band fronted by what I think is one of the greatest female front persons ever, Chrissy Amphlett and the Divinyls and Boys in Town, off the Monkey Grip soundtrack EP. So this was officially their first release. I love the Boys in Town. I think it's got a great lyric. It talks about a story about somebody who just wants to get out of their one-horse life, reflecting on all the people that they've had encounters with. And, just basically it's sort of reminiscing and sort of just wanting to get out of here. And it's sort of very introspective, but at the same time, the guitars, there's a lot of urgency. It's catchy as hell. And it's really funny to think that Mark McEntee he played an Air Supply. It's just really bizarre that he was a guitarist in in Air Supply and ended up forming this hard rock band with one of the most dynamite lead singers that Australia's ever produced.
Like, she was just fantastic. Yeah.
So, I mean, she was. You had to see her to believe it. She was part Iggy Pop, part female Bon Scott. Somebody described her as a female Bon Scott, and I get it.
Yeah, I get that, yeah.
Yeah, very charismatic.
Like the school uniform sort of lends to Angus Young.
Just putting her sexuality out on stage, and she just had total control of the stage. And I heard that, like, privately off stage she was very quiet, so it's a case of Jekyll and Hyde. On stage switch on, off stage very quiet. But I think this is one of their greatest songs, and it tells a story, and it's just a compelling story at that. And this went to number 8. I think it was one of their first hits in Australia, and that sent them on the way. So, Boys in Town.
Well, we did a debut show not that long ago, and debut album, and I would have actually picked that, except that it's an EP, not an album, so I didn't.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to be really boring, and I'm going to pick the third track off that exact same EP. If you want to hold it up again. So my pick is Elsie. Off that, which is kind of like the ballad, and it's fantastic EP. If you get a chance to get it. It's but Elsie, I might be going out on a limb when I say this, but I think for most Divinyls fans, even right to the end, that was their favourite, most people's favourite song of all of the songs. The way she does the vocals, it just like breaks your heart. It's just real gutsy and real, it's basically just about poverty, desperation, based on a girl who lives in a slum, basically. I mean, I can't add too much more to what you've said. Chrissy was actually the cousin of Little Paddy. Australians might remember Little Paddy was fun. I can't name any of the songs, but she was a well-known musician.
She was an early 60s pop singer, and she was part of the, I think some of the music would be kind of almost surf rock. I might be corrected, but she was definitely a very early 60s pop star in Australia.
Yeah,
but
so Kilbey was a cousin.
Yeah. But to the American audience, the Divinyls are probably known as a one-hit wonder with "I Touch Myself," which is probably one of their worst songs. I don't like it at all.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the only album of theirs I can get. The interestingly, when she died of breast cancer, and she had MS, and there was complications with the medication, with breast cancer and the MS clashing, and that's what basically brought about her death. But I remember there was a bunch of musicians got together, and female musicians, and did a cover version of "I Touch Myself," which was about feeling your breasts basically and checking. So
but you got to check out her work, and she should have been huge. And there's some great video footage of her. She did the Us 83 concert. You know, there was this big festival in California in front of 300,000 people. One day was a new wave, all the new wave bands. The second day was metal bands, and the third day was like David Bowie, etc. And she played it, and she just, was the very first act in front of 200,000 people. It's on YouTube, and she just holds the crowd in the palm of her hand.
She does. And she's absolutely mesmerizing. You just cannot take your eyes off her when she's
absolutely. They supported Aerosmith, and they had cow shit thrown at them and bottles, but she plugged ahead, stuff you, and persevered. And it's a shame, because they should have been uber huge, but just that one song. Now we're on the same track. Divinyls. All right, I'm going to go back in time to the 70s. And in the early 70s, there was one particular gentleman who ruled the roost and basically probably invented pub rock in Australia. He was previously a pop singer, had a hit with Poison Ivy, but his backing band, the Aztecs, ruled the roost in the 70s, and I'm talking about Billy Thorpe, and I'm talking about most people I know. So I think this is an Australian anthem. It's riffy as hell. He's probably prototype metal, Pete. He's probably a bit of hard rock, boogie, stoner rock, you name it. I've read stories about so many people went to his gigs, probably lost their hearing to this day. He had this famous catch cry of "suck more piss." He single-handedly was, the star of the show in the Sunbury Festival in 1972 in Melbourne, in front of about 50, 60,000 people. And it's where he was just a true Australian superstar. I think in the mid-70s, he went over to America, recorded. He had some middling success, did a lot of production work, a lot of songwriting, but in the early 70s, that that song was played everywhere, and it's probably an Australian iconic song.
Legendary song.
Yeah, and it's got a killer riff, really deep groove. And I really think if there was no Billy Thorpe, there may have been no AC/DC, no Angels, no Radiators. I think this guy single-handedly created pub rock and the Australian sound, and he's very important. So this song, if you like stoner rock, if you like sludge rock, if you like Deep Purple, Led Zeppelin, Black Sabbath, this is not too far out of the wheelhouse. Give it a listen.
Definitely. All right. My next one, and I could have picked any one of a million songs, but I had to pick one of this band because one is he's my favourite drummer. I'm talking about Rob Hurst and Midnight Oil. So the song I've chosen is US Forces, just because it is just one catchy song, and it sums them up really as a band. It's got great vocals, like Peter Garrett is just phenomenal with his vocals, really kick-ass thumping drums and little in fills and whatnot. It's just Rob Hurst is just a magical drummer, and it's political, which is right up their path, and it's just a hard hitting song. And the album 10 to 1 that's the album that really launched them into the big time here, and overseas too, I might add. But I think it was the first single off that album. I'm not sure if it came before Short Memory or but yeah, fantastic song. If you like fantastic drumming and really energy, it's not metal or anything like that. It's just very Australian pub rock. So like brilliantly done. And of course they went on to bigger things from that. So that's outstanding. I actually saw their last gig, and it's on my channel, and it was a very emotional sort of concert to go to. They played for almost 4 hours, 40 songs, and they covered from their first album right up to Resist, and they played that song, and it was truly magnificent. And Peter Garrett was just on fire. He's still got it. And Hurst, he is one of the best drummers Australia's ever produced. And very underrated.
He is.
I remember hearing an interview with him once. He was talking about, I think it was Red Sails in the Sunset, and they recorded it in Japan. And he said that the studio was flat. They couldn't get the sound, and they ended up recording it in the bathrooms because he had the echoey sound. Yes. So they had to wait until it was in a tower, like a business office tower, and they basically had to wait till everybody else cleared out, and then they'd set the drums up, and bang, you'd be in there bashing away. But phenomenal drum.
That song is when I think they hit the commercial sweet spot, because their earlier albums were very post-punk, very spiky.
Yeah.
But
injuries
I think
like that,
in 10 to 1, they sort of refined their songs, had a lot more acoustic guitars up front, more mature melodies. If anything, their songwriting lyrically got even better.
Yeah.
So I think they hit the sweet spot. And that definitely did big business in Australia, and they were on their way, and the rest is history. But it's sad that they're no longer. Maybe they might make another comeback, and maybe they will put records out. I'm not sure, but I saw that concert, and it was definitely it was pretty historic.
Yeah, they played me here too, and I'm really sorry I missed it. But
they'll probably be back. One-off shows, I hope. Anyway, we'll wait and see. My next pick is not too far outside the wheelhouse of Midnight Oil, but more on a punky path. This band formed in 1979 in Sydney, and I'm talking about the Celibate Rifles, and I'm talking about Electrovision Mantra. This band should have been huge. Damien Lovelock is a great, compelling frontman. Unfortunately, he passed away about 4 or 5 years to the dreaded sea. But Electrovision Mantra was off the Blind Ear album. That's probably their most commercial album, and it should have done Midnight Oil business. Their lyrics were getting more political. They cover the similar sort of things: social consciousness, environmental issues, social issues, people rights, observational lyrics. I love this song, Electrovision Mantra. It starts off with an Eastern mystical sitar, then goes into this really punky riff and thunderous drums. I wrote down, they're like a punkier version of Midnight Oil. Great guitar work with Kent Steedman, Dave Morris on bass. I've seen them a ton of times in the day, and they never disappointed live, and they were one of the best live acts around the Sydney pub scene.
They had a hell of a reputation, yeah.
Played CBGBs, they toured the world, huge reputation. I mean, I love the lyrics of Electrovision Mantra. I've got this one, I just wrote it down. Ships and rockets and guns and tanks never tells me how to thank, not the Russian or the Yanks, the International World Bank. Surprise, they hold the mortgage on the world. Oh, please don't evict us, Electrovision Mantra. Nothing much has changed. And he's got this really laconic Aussie twang. You know, he doesn't really sing, but it's sort of in that Aussie sort of way. Riffs over the songs, and it's just brilliant. Check it out. Celibate Rifles.
Celibate Rifles.
Blind,
I like where their name came from too. Like the opposite of the Sex Pistols. So it was supposed to be. That's basically.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah. Oh well, I'm going to go completely different for my next one. This is more of a pop song, although for some reason it gets classed as indie. It's from 2016, and it's by a woman named Amy Shark. And the song's Adore. I don't know if you know this one, Pete. It's
no.
Pretty mellow for our normal standards. However, Amy Shark's she's been around since 2016. That's her debut album, but she was around earlier than that. She used to actually play guitar in an all-girl punk band before hitting the big time as a solo artist. So she was basically pushed into by a boyfriend into going into a singing contest in 2007, and that's where she took off. And her boyfriend, who's now a husband, is still a manager and whatnot. So it's kind of a bit of a Gold Coast Aussie love story, and it's just blossomed from there. But the song Adore, I think it went to number 2 on the Australian charts, or was it number 2 in the hottest 100 on Triple J? It's a pop song. It's 100% a pop song, but she's got a real edge to her. So her vocals are really edgy. It's not a typical love song, you know. It talks about getting drunk and stuff like that. So it's very much for this. It just fits this generation and time, if you like. But yeah, it's a pop song with a real edge to it, and I just think it's fantastic songwriting. It's got like I said, it's got a sharp edge to it, and yeah, it's absolute great track. Really, really well done. So yeah, totally different.
Good stuff. I will track that down. I'm not familiar, but I know that she's very big in Australia, and her albums have done fabulously well. So
they class her in virtually every category there is. So it's weird how we do our categories, but
yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, if people know my channel, know that I love the church, and I've got to throw a church song in. And I'm trying not to repeat myself in this picking a 10 list, but I just couldn't avoid putting a church song. And this time I picked it off the Starfish album, but I'm not going to do Under a Milky Way. I'm going to actually put Reptile. I love that song, and I love the riff. It's a great Steve Kilbey lyric. His bass playing drives it, and you've got Peter Copies and Marty Wilson Piper. Beautiful delay guitar, and it sort of interweaves. It reminds me a little bit of Television meets The Cure. Really hypnotic, atmospheric. I would describe it as almost dream guitar pop. The lyric's quite interesting. It's about Steve Kilbey having a real life experience with a reptile. He went with a girl back to her apartment, went into the bathroom, opened the shower curtain, and there was a reptile in the bathtub.
What, a snake or a?
No, yeah, and it was a reptile. That's according to his story, and he wrote a song about it. So go figure. But really interesting sort of idiosyncratic lyrics from Steve Kilbey. But I love the guitar parts. They're so intricate. They play off each other. Hearing the guitars intertwine with each other and reminds me of that first Television album and a little bit of The Cure. I know I'm repeating myself, but just do yourself a favor. You've got to hear this song. And I think it's the strongest song on this album. Even maybe a bit better than Under a Milky Way. The Church, Starfish, and Reptile.
Right. Well, my next one, it's another ballady type number, and I could have chosen a million songs from Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds. And even back in his early days of Boys Next Door and the Birthday Party, there's a million songs to be chosen. But I chose this one not because it's my favourite, but it's just because it's one that everyone loves, even if they're not a Nick Cave fan. And that's Into My Arms out of 1997 off the Boatman's Call album. And if anybody's heard that album, then it's very, very laid back for Nick Cave. So to me, Into My Arms, it's got everything. It's got his vocals, which are just incredible on that song. It's got the usual Nick Cave themes, biblical themes, and all that sort of, all that sort of stuff, which Nick Cave fans would be well and truly used to. And it's just a beautiful love song. Like, I'm not really a love song type guy, but it is just...
No, you're not.
It is just... No, I'm not. It's just a beautiful song. It's just him and his piano, and that's
raw.
all it needs.
It's
raw.
Raw.
And it just feels like it's coming from the heart, It's... and it's, it's not my favourite Nick Cave song. Probably my favourite Nick Cave song would be The Mercy Seat, which is Getting the Electric Chair, which is a little bit different. But yeah, it's just, I don't know. It's just like a moment of tenderness, if you like.
Yeah.
From a guy who was pretty wild and pretty out there.
Yeah.
So,
I think that's an outstanding choice. I think it's a great song. Have you seen Nick Cave live?
Yeah, several times. Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't seen him several, but I've seen him once, and he is goddamn charismatic. He's another one that just holds the audience in the palm of his hand.
He's like a mad preacher.
Yeah, he was there, with the piano and his backing band, and he's one of the few performers, contemporary Australian living front men that just simply holds the audience in the palm of the hand. And you had these 20 to 60-year-old women in the front row just swooning and screaming. Yeah. They loved him. And he's cross-generational.
Yeah, like you go through stages with these albums, like so punk and so crazy in like the Birthday Party days and Boys Next Door, and then like by the time he got to The Good Son, when he got off the smack and everything like that, and then he just mellowed right out for that album. But it's just fantastic, like an absolute.
So much personal tragedy, and he just pours it out. He's naked. Just here I am, and here's my emotions. That's an outstanding pick, and I'm very glad for this show that you did pick a Nick Cave song. So well done. I'm going to do a little bit something. I'm going to talk about a band that I think is underrated, and you might. A lot of people may think, really? This band. There are a lot of bands in Australia that I would call regional. They were big in a particular state, but not Australia-wide. And this band was one of the hardest working bands in New South Wales. That's where I come from, in the Sydney region. They would have played every single RSL club, every leagues club, every pub. They started in like the late 70s. They're still going. they have just done millions of miles, just going from back to forward all around the regional parts of Australia, but mostly in this New South Wales area, playing their style of pub rock. And I'm talking about the Radiators. Now, when you think about the Radiators, you'd think, okay, bit bogan rock, and to our international audience, that's redneck. But they did a song off this album, Up for Grabs, and it's called Room Full of Diamonds. And it is a psychedelic classic. It is an actually great song. Stephen Kilbey from the church, and I respect his opinion, said it's probably the greatest psych Australian song ever written. And the church has actually covered it. If you listen to it, it's very much different to the Radiators' wheelhouse. It sounds post-punk. It's got a driving bass. It's psychedelic. Totally different to what they normally do, but I think this is a song that everybody, if you want to have an introduction to the Radiators and something a little bit different, listen to this song. You know, their other stuff, they have basically probably the bastard sons of Billy Thorpe in pub rock.
Yeah.
So songs like Coming Home, Summer Holiday, No Tragedy, there's another naughty song one I won't talk about, but they are the bastard sons of pub rock. But this particular song, Room Full of Diamonds, is in my opinion, it's a classic, and it definitely needs to be listened to. So maybe a little bit obscure. So Room Full of Diamonds, it's off the Up for Grabs album, and they're still going strong. And they, as I said, they have played every single pub in the land. And I'm sure they're still going. And I'm sure you've seen them a few times, Peter.
I've seen them once. I've seen them once. It's one of my exes was a massive fan of them, and I wasn't such a big fan. I didn't mind a couple of their songs, but I used to see Glenn Turner used to be I don't know, he used to hang out at a pub near me, and so I used to see him quite a lot. But yeah, like some of their songs were just like Aussie classics, absolute Aussie classics.
And if you listen to them, you know, they age quite well. Brian is a really good front man, and he's not too far removed from the Doc Neeson type of front man. He's very charismatic. He holds the audience in the palm of his hand. They've got a bit of a sense of humor about them. They should have probably had a bigger reputation than they did, but I think it's because a lot of people put them in that bogan rock category and were quite dismissive that, the people in the western suburbs, in the backwaters, you know, that's their sort of music, and, you know, they probably didn't get the raps that they should have got.
Someone once said to me, and I can't remember who it was, but someone once said to me when I was playing the Kaiser Chiefs that the Kaiser Chiefs sounded like the Radiators. And really? I didn't actually hear it until they said that. And then I thought, yeah, I can actually hear a lot of that in the Kaiser Chiefs. Not saying the Kaiser Chiefs ripped them off, but it's along that sort of same sort of sense of humour and style, I suppose.
Yeah. Well, that music's dead. Pub rock's gone. So it's a bygone era, and it's probably a little bit of a relic, but that song is a killer one. And I would, if I did an Aussie compilation album that I had to, you know, give to someone on a desert island, I would definitely choose that song because it's well written, and it's slightly different to their normal stuff. And yeah, it's worth listening to.
Well, there you go. Well, I'll jump to this one, which is since we're talking about Aussie pub rock legends, these guys that I'll talk about this song, two absolute legends of Australian Aussie pub rock, to the extent that we all know the Dire Straits song "Sultans of Swing," Guitar George and Harry. If you know the lyrics, you know, Guitar George knows all the chords, Harry doesn't mind. Yeah. Those two guys are the guys I'm going to talk about today. Their names are George Young and Harry Vander. So Vander and Young, most people might recognise that name from reading it on the inside of an AC/DC sleeve. Former members of the Easy Beats, and they pretty much recorded every Australian pub rock legend band there ever was. So
yes,
AC/DC, the Angels,
yes,
Tattoo,
John Paul Young,
Fire Boys, yep, Ted Mullery gang, the whole lot. So you don't get much more. You could do a whole show on these two guys.
And we should.
Maybe we should. They had a lot to do with Albert Records, who obviously did a lot of Australian bands. So what most people might not realise is they actually had a band themselves after they left the Easy Beats, Flash in the Pan. So I could have chosen any song. Another interesting fact about these two guys is Flash in the Pan's first single, which was Hey St. Peter. The B-side of it was a song called Walking in the Rain, which was the first hit of Grace Jones. Yes. So she covered the B-side of one of their songs. So, yeah. But anyway, the song I'm doing is Lady Killer, which to me, it's a catchy number. It's got a bit of sass. Like it starts off like it's really disco-y, and then it kicks into the vocals. And when you hear the vocals, it just oozes pub rock feel. It's just these guys are just absolute legends of Aussie pub rock, and I just could not go without mentioning them. And that's my favourite song of theirs. I could have chosen a number of them. It's even got a Walty MIDI reference in it.
Yes.
I just love it.
They're very quirky. I love them.
It's really quirky, and that just you don't get much bigger legends of Aussie rock than those two guys. They mightn't have been at the front of it, but they were behind a hell of a lot of it.
Oh, absolutely. Their fingerprints are over Australian rock, left, right, and centre. I've got a few Flash in the Pan albums. I love them a lot, and they were quite big in the UK and Germany. Yeah, I think they're do yourself a favour. They're quirky. There's a lot of humour in their lyrics.
Yes.
Their sound is not so much if you're thinking it's going to be like an AC/DC album, it's not so. It's a bit more dance orientated, a bit more funky, a bit more poppy, but it always interesting.
A lot of piano, a lot of piano in it. It's it's certainly not of the same vein as AC/DC, even though that's basically where they came from. It's classic Aussie pub rock.
No, that's a good one. Rightio. So the next band I'm going to pick formed in the early 80s. The band in question is Spy vs. Spy. And this is called Don't Tear It Down off the AO modified TV version album. So this was a bit of a hit, their big radio hit of 1986. How would I describe them? They're not too far from the wheelhouse of Midnight Oil, very socially conscious. This song, I love the lyrics. It speaks to the corrupt government and the social injustice of just tearing old houses down and putting up these really ugly new buildings without awareness or consideration of the environment and people's rights. It was very much in the 80s, there was a lot in the press about overdevelopment and big business and corruption within the government. And I think
that's all gone away.
It's still ongoing. But this is an absolute banger of a song. It's got an interesting, it's sort of slightly U2 feel to it. It's got a little bit of the edge sound with the guitar harmonies and the chordal progressions. And that bridge, it's a real banger. And I know you and I used to go to clubs and get out the air guitar when this used to go on the dance floor amongst some of our other mates. This is a very popular song. But they were signed to the Midnight Oil Powderworks label. Gary Morris was actually their manager. They should have been a lot bigger. Craig Bloxham was the bass and lead vocalist. Cliff Grigg was on drums, and Michael Wheely was on guitar. I saw them a ton of times. They had a big sound. I think the drummer Cliff Grigg has died, and Craig Bloxham has gone on to another career. He's actually a chef.
Wow.
And he's gone, completely out of the music business, which is a little bit disappointing to me because I always wanted, had such interesting lyrics and he was an interesting vocalist and he's gone on to a different career. Spy versus Spy, just incidentally, were huge in South America. They would actually play to crowds of 100,000. So it's really funny. South America, there's certain Australian bands that are absolutely massive over there. In Brazil, Hoodoo Gurus, Australia Crawl. But I read stories that Spy versus Spy could attract these huge crowds. But a couple of albums after this, they were gone. But I describe them, they're very post-punk, very edgy. And if you like Midnight Oil, they're not too far outside that wheelhouse. And I really like that song. And it's really good lyrics.
Good pick. I'd completely forgotten about Spy versus Spy. So yeah, they were, and it's a fantastic album title too. I think, like it's just So my next pick is another one which it's a great tune, but I've picked it for the lyrics. I just think there's no one else that could possibly do this song and get away with it. And it's a song called Rock and Roll Is Where I Hide, Dave Graney and the Coral Snakes. So it's Dave Graney's a rather unique character. I suppose if you had to pick a similar character, maybe a Jarvis Cocker might be along, but yeah. There's a line in this song which sums up Dave Graney, and that's where he says the best dressed chicken in town, and that's Dave Graney. He's just out there. He's a Australian legend. I don't know how many hundreds of albums he's done, but he seems to pop out an album every couple of weeks. But yeah, this one's off the Soft and Sexy Sound, which I think's his best album, and it's an Aussie classic. The song itself is about a guy who is a rock and roll singer who pretends that he thinks he's invisible because people expect the unexpected of him. So it just goes into some bizarre. I'll read you some of the lyrics. It goes, he's talking about being seen in a cafe, and he's going, it's not such a bad thing to be seen as a guy who thinks he can't be seen, even though I know I can. It's quite a trick. And it's like, it just goes into just bizarre places. It's just one of those songs that you can only this guy could write anything like it and get away with it. It's just right out there. And then at the end, it just goes into all these characterizations of a rock star, like the seventh son of a seventh son, the best dressed chicken in town, the little cloud that cried, just goes through all these names. It's just absolute classic. It's worth listening to just for the lyrics. You'll get a laugh out of it. But it's a great song as well. So, and it's a fantastic album. So
yeah, all right. Yeah. Well, I'll track that down. But he's definitely no, I'm not really familiar with his work, but he was big in the 90s, and he used to do this real persona of being very suave, wearing these very safari suit. Yeah, unique dress style, very sartorial.
Yeah. Yeah,
you're very groovy, baby, sort of, like almost Austin Powers.
Yeah,
sort of.
That is that type of character. Yeah,
yeah. But with a sense of humor, biting satire. Yeah. All right, I'll track that down.
It's probably the funniest lyrics I've heard. Yeah.
Yep.
You don't know whether he's taking himself seriously or whether he's not taking himself seriously, and that's the kind of Dave Graney effect that you get. It's he's just out there.
Yeah,
and he's excellent live.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. All right. Well, I'll track that one down. That's a good pick. Right. Well, we're coming to the 9 and the 10. So this song I picked, I can't not leave this out of the 10. I think this is a song that, if you want to hear a classic Australian song, you must listen to this song. The lead singer of this band was a bit of a pop star, handsome, chiseled looks.
Like us.
No, not like me. But he had like the teen crowd. They would look at him, and when he put this song out in 1983, the lyrics really are so deep, so mature, so haunting. And I'm talking about James Reyne and Australian Crawl with Reckless. I think this is one of the great Australian songs. Sonically, it starts off and it's just vocals, bass, and a drum. The song is actually, it picks a lot of the Australian places and experiences. It talks about the Manly Ferry. It talks about Robert Scott, who was or Antarctic explorer, and Burke and Wills. It picks up a lot on the Australian experiences, but the song itself is about heroin addiction. And I don't know if a lot of people know about that.
Yeah.
I was reading into it. So it's sort of like a metaphor that this person is traveling to Manly for a hit and reflecting on his life and the dire position he is in. And it sort of compares the experience with Robert Scott. Now, Robert Scott was an explorer that was in a race to be the first person to reach the South Pole. But when he reached the South Pole, he discovered that there was another person, Roald Amundsen, had beaten him, and he died on his return. So you've got these Australian experiences, and in this song, and it's compelling, but it's all about this person who has heroin addiction, going to Manly to get a hit, the spiral of his life and the dire situation he's in. And I must have heard this song hundreds of times on the radio, but I never thought it was about heroin addiction.
No, I don't recall having that thought either. It was a massive song, and yeah.
And when you think about it, it's just, it's something that you wouldn't expect somebody like a James Reyne Australia Call, because I think that initially their first album, Boys Light Up, it's very light. I wouldn't call it lightweight, but it was very pub rock, surf rock, having a good time. And for him to pull something like this out of the bag, which is immensely emotional, haunting, and deep, and it makes it compelling, is just, quite unique. So I think it's one of the great Australian songs. It's got even fine guitar work, that lead break in the middle, and I think everyone should listen to this song. It really, and I think part of the what makes it so good is where he picks up and refers to Australian places and experiences. But yeah, it's about heroin addiction.
There you go. It's an Aussie classic, but and it is a classic, and we do have a couple that are about heroin addiction, well-known Aussie songs actually, but that one I didn't know about. I didn't realise that's what it was about. So yeah, interesting.
Yeah, it says lay down your guns.
There you go.
So that's one of those things where there are songs about experiences, but I must have heard this song millions of times, but I wouldn't have. Yeah,
yeah, gazillions of times. Yeah, but yeah, I didn't pick up on it. Yeah.
A funny thing, James Reyne gets knocked a lot about his drawl type singing, and Triple J, they had this competition. They played a James Reyne song and said, "Can anyone understand what James Reyne's saying?" And there was a caller that rung them up and said, "Yeah, I know exactly what he's saying." And they go, "Who are you?" "James Reyne."
I actually heard him interviewed on the death of Aussie pub rock, and he said that the moment Aussie pub rock died, he knew it was dead. Is he went to I can't remember what town it was, but it was a country town, and he was playing at one pub, and as a solo artist. So you can go see James Reyne at such and such a pub, and down the road at the other pub was an Aussie Crawl cover band. And the Aussie Crawl cover band got the bigger crowd than the actual guy from Aussie Crawl. And he said, to me, that's the death of Aussie pub rock. And it kind of
that's a bit sad.
There was a stage where it was like that. It was like there was so many cover shows that were. It was it's. Also coincided not long after with the pokey takeover of pubs.
Yeah, well, that really killed the scene. But cover bands really sort of were soaking up the scene, and a lot of original bands just could not get a gig because not a lot of people were willing to back these sort of venues, all these sort of bands to develop and build an audience. They just wanted the instant audience.
Yeah.
Instant money, gratification.
And people not willing to take a risk on going to see a band, wanting to know every single song. It's like it's my next song is from 2015, and someone who died recently was a legendary singer, Archie Roach, and he had a song which was about the stolen generation, and that was a song called "They Took the Children Away," and it was basically about white people colonised and basically stole the children, and thought they knew better and could raise them better than the Indigenous community, and so they basically stole all the kids. So this song from 2015 is called "The Children Came Back," which is by Briggs, a guy called Garamal Yunupingu, who does some awesome vocals on this, and Dwayne Everett Smith. Briggs, a lot of people might know him from being on the Charlie Pickering show and whatnot, but as a rapper, he is phenomenal. And he's behind a lot of other artists as well, not just rap. But this song, it was a song that he did to encourage reconciliation. And at the moment over here, we've got a thing going on with a voice to Parliament, and there's going to be a referendum on it. And so I thought this is quite a timely song to mention because of that. It was done to encourage reconciliation between black and white. It's probably one of the most notorious times in our country's history is the stolen generation.
Yes.
And the premise of the song is the children are back, like the stolen generation are back again. So it's basically a roll call of Indigenous people that have hit the big time, pretty much hit the big time and shaped the country as we know it. So at the time, Briggs said it was a history lesson, a monologue, a celebration, and an education all in one song. And it's probably one of the greatest rap songs in Australia, I'd say, if not the best.
Well done. Everyone should hear that.
Absolute classic. It's
Even very important lyrics.
Culture, it's just well done. The vocals of Guramal are just phenomenal. It's just fantastic song.
Yeah. Great. Well, I might even put that on my song list on the channel if people want to check that out. I'll just put that up on the song list.
Absolutely. And Archie Roach is in the clip too. So it is a response to his song. Archie's obviously mentioned in the song, but Archie actually appears in the clip.
Yeah, no, legendary. No, that's good. Well, that's number 10 for you. I'll finish up with number 10 with me. This band, they've got a wide sense of humour. They're perfect. They're pop ironists or rock ironists. They're alternate rock. I think they're probably Australia's answer to Devo, and I'm talking about Regurgitator, and I'm talking about Everyday Formula off the Unit album. This was a huge hit. Everyday Formula wasn't probably the hit off this album. Black Bugs and a few other songs off that album were much bigger, but I love Everyday Formula. Talks about environmental issues. It's got a social consciousness, so it's a bit of a Trojan horse type of song. It's very punky. Only goes for 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes. It's fast, it's furious, and I just love the Gurge. They're great live. Yeah, as I said, I think if you like Devo, you like New Wave, they're probably Australia's answer. They've got a bit of everything, very eclectic live, bit of rap, bit of metal, bit of New Wave, electro. They've got it all. Quan, Yemen's is he's a really great songwriter. That was from 1997, and that's The Gurge. So that's how I finish up this show.
That is a great track. That is a fantastic track, and I do think that's the best track on the album. It's it's fast, furious, and it's got that little keyboard. It's just that poppy little all the way through it. It's just gold song. Absolute excellent.
And any video that sort of brings back Tron is thumbs up with me, like retro.
Yeah, they're a great band, The Gurge. Great band.
Well, they're still going, and I saw a show earlier this year. They're still doing shows. So there you go.
Yeah, no, fantastic. Yeah, good pick.
All right. Well, thanks, Pete. This has been
great.
Pete. Just doing 10 songs Australian that you must hear before you die. We may do another show because there are so many great Australian songs. This is not necessarily the 10 greatest songs of all time. No. It's not a ranking show, but it's just 10 songs that we like and we really enjoy. And just do yourself a favor and just do yourself a favor and check it out. All right. So please check out Peter on Wixxyleaks, and also please like and subscribe to Rock Daydream Nation. We will have a show very soon. Catch you later. See ya. Bye.
Thanks, mate.